Hi everybody, long time no see. I have fallen behind on my book reviews, as you may have noticed. It's been a little while since I have uploaded one of these reviews. Admittedly, my reading came down a little bit. I have not been reading as much. There was just a lot going on recently, but I have been reading. So we're going to do a little bit of a lightning round of all of the books that I have been reading and that I have read, so I can kind of catch you guys up, and then hopefully as we head into winter and into next year, I can just sort of stay on top of it. But fingers crossed. So here are all the books that I have been reading since we last talked. Okay, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, Demon Copperhead, Broken Country, The Compound, The Names, and The Lincoln Highway. Some of these are new books, some of these are older books. Like example, Lincoln Highway, I bought that maybe 3-4 years ago, and it had been sitting in my TBR, but to be honest, it's intimidating. It's a thick book, and the way that Amor Towles writes, I enjoy it, but it is time consuming. And some of these are newer books. Like I think The Names is kind of new, and Demon Copperhead was very popular last year, so it is also kind of a newer book. I'm just gonna go one by one and kind of talk about what I did and didn't like about each one, as far as I can remember, because some of these, it's been a hot minute since I've read them. So let's start at the top. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This is part of, I think, a trilogy. I'm not sure if I'm going to go ahead and get the additional books in this trilogy. They look good. I liked it. The main character was entertaining, to say the least. It's kind of like a thriller light. So it's definitely a thriller. There's a mystery, so to speak. There was a murder that happened in this girl's town a couple years ago, and she's doing her senior thesis, and she decides that she's going to try to solve this murder, and she kind of has a relationship with some of the friends of the girl that was murdered, as well as some of the friends or the siblings of the people who are assumed to be guilty for the murder, and she just doesn't believe that that individual has done it. So she's basically trying to figure out who actually did it. She does in the end, not to spoil things, but she does figure out who the true murderer is. There's some drama, there's some chaos, there's a little bit of some violence kind of mixed in there, but it's very light. It's not like, I don't know, too gory or too messed up in the head, but there's definitely some action. Okay, the next book, Demon Copperhead. Okay, this book was so popular last year. It won so many awards, and so many people I know ranted and raved about how much they loved this book. And I will say I did not hate it, but that doesn't necessarily sell you guys on it. It just wasn't for me. There was a lot of really interesting things that happened in this book. It's kind of following the life of this person who grew up in, I think it's either West Virginia or Western Kentucky or Tennessee. It's what some people kind of consider the Rust Belt, or maybe the Rust Belt is north of where this is, but it's kind of following his whole life and his journey through the foster system and addiction, and kind of how he's had so many opportunities to have it all in life, quote unquote, and he manages to kind of mess them up, but not necessarily due to his own fault, but just kind of due to his circumstances and what he's been through. It was a good book. There were just parts of this book that dragged on and that were less than interesting, and there's something about the writing style that also just seemed to drag on. So I didn't hate it. I liked it. I didn't love it. So that's Demon Copperhead. Okay, next is Broken Country. This one I was expecting it to be, and I don't know why, I was expecting it to be set in 1950s America. It's not. It's actually set in, I think, Ireland or England, and it does actually start back in, I think, the 1940s or 30s, and then it kind of goes into the present. This was interesting. It's written in a number of different perspectives, not so much different perspectives of changing the character, but changing where you are in that character's life. So there's parts where she's very, very young and she's meeting her first love, and then there's parts where she is an adult and she's married to somebody else and she's lost a child, and then there's modern parts that are taking place within a courtroom where somebody died and her husband's on trial. We don't know who died, and at some points we don't even know necessarily that her husband is on trial. But it was interesting. It kind of switched perspective, and it also has a little bit of that unreliable narrative going on where she kind of buries the leads. Like, she doesn't admit to certain things until very late in the book, and some of those things that she doesn't admit to are kind of reasons that she does certain things that she does. But it was a good one. This was a very, very good one. I enjoyed it. It was a quick read. Again, Broken Country. After that, or maybe before that, again, the order, I don't know if these are necessarily the order I read them in either. The book next that I'm going to talk about is The Compound. This is a new one, and this was actually very, very interesting. I'm a big fan of reality TV. I like The Real Housewives. I like Big Brother. I like all those dating shows like Love Island and The Bachelor and all that stuff. And so I was kind of drawn to this because it's based off of a, young 20-something going on a reality TV dating show and trying to stay there the longest that you can win a prize. The thing is, this is like set in a crazy, like, post-apocalyptic almost world where the people within the show get to do some crazy things that people in real reality TV can't do, like violence and manipulation, and there's like borderline starvation and stuff where like the producers are like kind of torturing them and mentally messing with them. It was such a good book. This one, again, it was a surprise. I was not expecting maybe half the things that happened in this book because I just thought it was going to be about a reality TV dating show, and it was actually about a lot more than that. It has some themes about like consumerism and things like that. It was really very entertaining. This book was amazing, and I do mean amazing. I had no idea what this book was going to be about when I started it. It's called The Names. It's by Florence Knapp. I don't know if they have other books out, but I might look into it. This book was so cool. The premise of this book alone, very interesting. So you start reading this book, you meet a mom, she just had a baby, and she has to go and register the baby's name. I think this takes place either in the UK, London, or Ireland. I'm not 100% sure, but she has to go file the paperwork to file the baby's name. And there's 3 different names that are on the table. There's the name that her husband wants, there's the name that the daughter wants, and then there's the name that she wants. And basically, the book splinters off where there's different scenarios at play, different lives happen based off of the name that the child gets. So the one name that the husband wants, the husband is horribly abusive, but because the wife listened and did what he wanted, they end up staying together for a lot longer. And then the relationship between the mother and the son and between the siblings changes drastically because of how they grow up. And then in scenario number 2, where she chooses the daughter's name, things change because obviously the husband is upset that she did not use the name that he wanted. And things kind of fall apart quick, but the 2 siblings get to be so close, and they kind of grow up in a different environment altogether, and so who they are when they grow up changes drastically. And then the third situation is where she picks a name that she enjoys, which again doesn't go well with the husband, but it kind of leads to this really interesting situation where the siblings are not as close as they were in scenario number 2, but they are close, and I don't know, it was just very interesting. It was kind of cool. It was just a cool concept, and it was really, really well done, very entertaining, and it switches perspectives. So every chapter goes from all the different names. I'm trying to remember what some of the names were. I know one was Bear. Bear was one of the names that I really, really enjoyed. I can't remember what the other 2 were, but trust me, very, very good book, The Names. And then lastly, the big monster, Lincoln Highway. So I love Amor Towles. He's one of my favorite authors. I've read Gentleman in Moscow and Rules of Civility and all those other books. I think he's an amazing author, and I've said it once and I'll say it again. He does the tangents very well. Nothing drives me more insane than when I'm reading a book and the author goes off on this crazy tangent for what seems like no reason, and then I'm stuck reading 5 to 10 pages of something that doesn't matter. It drives me insane. It's like you're writing a college essay and you're just trying to reach a certain word count. I don't like it, but for some reason, Amor can do it in a way where you like it, the side character, even if you only see him for 5 minutes and you spend 10 pages talking about how he grew up and where he's from and all this, that, and the other, it makes sense and I like it. And I don't know any other way to explain it, but for some reason he can do stuff that other authors make me go crazy for in a bad way, but he makes me go crazy in a good way. I love it. The story was entertaining. It's kind of about these two brothers that go on an adventure, so to speak. The one brother has a little bit of a past, so to speak, and he gets out of jail. He goes home and he takes his little brother, and they said, we're going to move to California. They're in, I think, Nebraska or Kansas when they start, and they are trying to head to California, but things go haywire, and they end up heading to New York, and just chaos ensues. There's always these kind of weird circles that go on in a lot of Amor Towles books where he has a character kind of go on all these little side quests, and they very rarely get to go on their main quest. In fact, this book ends with them starting to go to California. Like, they're getting in the car to finally go to California after months and months and months of craziness. And there's just all these interesting side characters and people that the brother knows and people that they meet along the way. Very, very good. I think out of all of them, I don't know, the names might be my favorite. It was such an original idea. It was so well written, and each of the three storylines, so to speak, had their own little entertaining bits, and I enjoyed it. All right, so that's where I'm at. If you've read any of these books, let me know. Right now I am reading The Maidens, which I do not have within my reach because I have all these other books stacked up. So hopefully I can get back to you guys and have a review of The Maidens very soon. So if you have read any of these books or The Maiden, let me know your thoughts and feelings, and I will see you guys next week. Okay, bye.